So good afternoon again, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on modernization solutions from ProSoft. So let's get started. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we get going. So this webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording and the slides in a few days after this webinar. Also a reminder, if you've got any questions, please post them on the Q&A window so that our panelists can get through with them either during the webinar or at the end of this session. Okay, before we get started, so just a quick introduction of myself. So my name is Vishal Prakash. I am the product manager at ProSoft Technology for our remote access and IIoT solution portfolio. I have been with ProSoft for just over 2 years, and my background is primarily in SCADA and telemetry, and I've been in the industry for well over 20 years. So thank you all for your time. I hope you find this webinar useful. Also, given the current crisis, I hope that all of you and your families are staying safe and well. Okay, so let's get started. So the agenda for today, so this is the idea with this webinar is we're going to try and keep it to 30 minutes with where we should have plenty of time for Q&A. The agenda for today, a quick introduction of who's ProSoft. We're going to look at what is modernization, the reasons or the drivers to modernize, and then a quick look at ProSoft's modernization solution. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, ProSoft Technology has been in business for well over 30 years. We were acquired by Belden in 2014. We tend to partner with major global automation associations. And really our strength is to connect disparate protocols across the factory floor, and then to get that information from point A to point B via different means safely and securely. So today, ProSoft's strengths, as shown in the pyramid on the right-hand side, is protocol connectivity, and we support over 40 different protocols and over 120 different combinations of protocols, and the data translation, so that is getting the data from A through to B safely and securely, either with wired or wireless communications. Okay, so let's get started. What is modernization? The definition of modernization can really be defined as a process to improve the capacity and the process of a machine, thus prolonging their service life. Now, I'm going to be talking about industrial automation, obviously, and modernization within the industrial automation environment over the next few minutes, but I thought let's start off with an example, or at least an excellent example of really or a practical example of what modernization is. And I could not think of anything better than the B-52 bombers. Now, these B-52 bombers started flying in the 1950s, and they are still going strong today. Like I said, if you think about what the definition of modernization, which I just stated, which is a process to improve the capacity of a machine, prolonging their service life, there really can't be a finer example of this particular, of the B-52 bomber, like I said, that has been in operation for well over 70 years, and to date is still going very strong. In fact, I was reading that certain enhancements have been made to the aircraft that will allow it to continue operating and serve the US Air Force for the next several decades. All right, having started with that example, let's look at why you should modernize. Now, according to ARC, they say that the automation systems at the end of life is approximately, though, the value of automation systems at the end of their life is greater, to the north of $65 billion. And the unplanned downtime costs exceed. So unplanned downtime is, as the name suggests, it's something that you're not planned for, but as a result of a number of factors. But fundamentally, the cause is failure, and that exceeds well over $20 billion. So if you take both of those numbers, which are big numbers, and the source for both of those is the ARC, if you take that data into account and you look as to why somebody would modernize, really should give you those primary drivers. Remember, the aim of modernization is to prolong the life of an asset, which in turn, what you're doing is prolonging the life of the process. Now, some of the other drivers as to why you would want to modernize is to increase productivity. So you may find that a process today is running at a certain percentage, but by perhaps modernizing a part of that process, of that existing process, you may be able to increase the productivity of the entire spectrum, or the entire part of that, the entire process or the entire solution by a significant number that makes an impact on the overall efficiency. Again, if you look at that number, where automation systems are at the end of their life, but that number is greater than 65 billion, modernization can help you mitigate the risk of existing equipment failure. Even though we saw that example of the B-52 bomber where it has been operating for 70 plus years, the reason why that particular aircraft has done so well is because there was a strategy and a plan in place to continuously look at what parts of the equipment that could fail, and then put a plan in place to ensure that they take part, or they take care of that failure before it actually happened. Clearly, in the case of an aircraft, obviously very, very critical, where the maintenance plays a huge role, and hence that's the other driver that is part of this modernization. And there are different types of maintenances. You've got predictive, proactive, and reactive. Reactive is after the fact. Proactive is simply changing out something proactively without having the data, the analysis in hand to understand, is this truly the cause or the root cause as to why something should be changed. Predictive maintenance, on the other hand, is data-based, is analytical-based. And again, when you have that data, part of that maintenance could be the modernization of the machine, the process, to ensure that you're elongating or you're continuing to long that process. And the last reason for modernization is reduce CapEx budgets. Think about, as an example, let's say you put a project together, rip and replace, and then your boss would come and tell to you that, no, you've lost your budget, or the budget has been reduced by 50%. So a great way, once you're hit with that kind of a scenario, is to look at something like phased migration, which again is part of this modernization strategy, where rather than replacing everything in once, you could modernize certain parts of the machine, the process, again elongating the life of the entire solution. Okay, so once you've understood the reasons as to why you do need to modernize, I think one of the things you need to consider is how And really, if you look at those questions in general, the entire purpose of when you want to get into this modernization is to have a plan. Because there are problems, and you want to have a plan, a strategy in place that you can ensure that you are that you deal with those issues in a timely and satisfactory manner. So, for example, do you start with a component level modernization, or do you start with modernizing your main primary controller, which could be the heart of the machine? What are the risks in doing that? And if you do that, then what is the effect on your downtime? And can you mitigate that risk if you think that there is a significant risk that you could impact the downtime? Have you got a strategy or a process in place to mitigate that? What could be the risk of failure? So, for example, if you decide to actually change out the controller, then is that a much bigger risk of failure versus, let's say, changing out, for example, the panels or the HMI on a machine? So any which way you look at it, modernization is important. It's critical. It's going to help you save time. It's going to help you elongate the process. But it's also extremely important to have a process in place, a strategy in place to help you go through that modernization step. And here at ProSoft, we can certainly help you do that. In fact, we've been helping our customers modernize really for several years now, for well over a decade. Again, remember, the aim of modernization is to elongate is to help you elongate the life of the solution or the process in such a way that it can help with increased efficiency and productivity. So some of the existing modernization solutions, which my colleague Simon Kembo will be going through in a couple of weeks in more detail at a technical level. Some of our existing solutions, including things like the ability to do a blue hose replacement. Now, one of the things we do with our solution is, at least with many of our solutions, is to see how we can help modernize without actually impacting or touching what's already there. So, for example, if you look at the very first image in the slide with the ANX2, the idea is to assist bringing sort of remote I/O into the newer Ethernet IP protocol on the Rockwell platform without having to touch or without having to reprogram what's already out there. So the solution from ProSoft looks at taking the existing data that you have and then helping it convert to the new protocol without actually having to touch, like I said, the existing protocol. We've also got solutions to help you go from the older DF1, which is serial-based Rockwell protocols, through to, again, the Ethernet IP, which is really the new standard. I think what you will see here in common is that many of our modernization solutions, and what I'm going to talk about next, is really centered around the Rockwell portfolio. Now, that's not to say that's the only platform or the only architecture we support. Our solutions can be used with other products as well. So, for example, with the ANX2 module, there are versions or there are variations of module to help modernize the GE platform, for example, or the Honeywell platform. So again, Simon will be going through the whole gamut of it in the next couple of weeks. So please make sure that you attend that webinar as well, which is technical. So having already vested or ProSoft being vested in helping our customers with the modernization solutions, we wanted, based on market research, we looked at how else we can work or help our customers elongate or prolong the life of their assets and solution. So what we did was to partner with our strategic, and take advantage of a strategic relationship with the Parian Technologies, and we have expanded our modernization offering to include these additional gateways. So the total of 6 up there. So you've got the ControlNet and the DeviceNet, which we will go through in a little bit more detail. Then we've also got the CanOpen and the J1939. And if you look at the last two, they are the position and the time sync gateways. They're not quite a modernization in the classic sense that they take something old and they help integrate with something new or convert to something new, but they're really there to provide new functionality to an existing system. So for example, if you take the time sync module, the time sync module was designed to coordinate, because it supports multiple protocols, to coordinate between, let's say, an existing PLC 5 system to the newer Ethernet IP by giving the time sync capabilities, and to ensure or to allow for that PLC 5 to provide more time critical data and say perhaps be more accurate with time critical operations. Okay. So the value proposition, the reason why, like I said, we expanded our modernization offering to include these gateways was really driven on market data and requests from our customer base. But the reason why we went with Parian, who are very well known with their engineered solutions. So they focus on solutions that are easy to integrate, easy to program, easy to configure. So we've taken those advantages and then added it to our ProSoft global sales and marketing channel. But the entire reason to choose our solutions is really the reliability. Like I said, we've been doing modernization and helping our customers for quite some time. We also, I think most of you are well aware of ProSoft's free product technical support, which is around the world. So you're able, we do the follow the sun approach. So we've got tech support people located globally and strategically where you can contact them for support. The products are very, very easy to use and configure. If you look at things like, for example, they've got add-on instructions, and they've got things like direct-to-tag technology, advanced diagnostics, so analyzer to allow you to look at your comms traffic and really look sort of at a low level as to what's happening and look at those issues. Another fundamental reason why these solutions would work is because they're being optimized primarily for Rockwell architectures. Like I say, that's not the only thing we do, but they are optimized for anything Rockwell. So I said we're going to look at a couple of these gateways in detail. The first one we're going to look at is the ControlNet Router. So what is ControlNet? So for those of you who don't know, it's actually one of 3 open protocols that's based on the SIP standard. It is very common with Rockwell-based systems. It was used primarily because it was ultra-reliable, high-speed, and a deterministic protocol, and that was used for time-critical applications. This particular solution makes sense because of the direct mapping from Ethernet IP to ControlNet. As you can see from the image, there are 2 Ethernet ports which you can use as a DLR, so device level ring. Again, you know, that value proposition of this being optimized for a Rockwell architecture, or you can simply use it as a 2-port Ethernet switch. It does support redundant ControlNet architectures, and it is super simple to configure. So the idea here is more configuration rather than actual programming. If you look at some examples, the first example is a control to Ethernet IP interface. So as you can see up here, if you've got you know, either SCADA system like FTView or a panel view that's on Ethernet IP, you will then be able to interface that to into a ControlNet architecture with a PLC using the gateway or the router in between. Another example is to, let's say, remotely program a ControlNet-based PLC using the gateway to interface, let's say, between the software which is Ethernet IP based, through to the ControlNet PLC. So the other gateway that we're going to look at is the DeviceNet Router. So this one is one of those 3 open standards along with ControlNet. This also uses SIP, but over a CAN media layer to connect to field devices. And the reason why DeviceNet was created or invented and used was because it used just small packets of data at low speeds and provided sort of a small footprint and a fairly inexpensive protocol for control solutions. This particular gateway, just as with the previous gateway, is very easy with a very flexible configuration, optimized for Rockwell architectures, and sort of this very easy DeviceNet panel view replacement where there is a lot of those out there in the marketplace. So if you look at a couple of these examples, the very first one is the interface, is to interface Ethernet-only panel views to legacy and logic controllers over DeviceNet. And the example on the right is to interface logic controllers to DeviceNet devices over Ethernet IP. Okay, like I said, I am going to keep this webinar brief, so we're actually end of the presentation. I am now open for Q&A. Just a reminder that in a couple of weeks, my colleague Simon Kembo is going to be looking at our solutions a bit more in detail, and definitely that's going to be a full-blown technical overview. But in the meantime, feel free to ask me questions now, but you can also go to our website for additional information on any of the material that I presented today. So either feel free to type in your question, or you could unmute yourself to ask me. Okay, so here's a question that's come in. So one of the participants have asked about the time sync gateway. So let me go back a couple of slides. Where I've listed all of it. So the question on the time sync gateway is, does this particular module support multiple protocols? So the answer to that is yes, it does support Ethernet IP and Modbus protocol. Any other questions? Oh, very good. If there are no other questions, thank you again for your time. I hope you found this very short webinar useful. Please stay safe, stay healthy given the current crisis, and feel free to contact your local ProSoft distributor or your regional sales manager if you've got any questions regarding any of the solutions that was presented today. Thank you all for your time. Bye for now.